In this video, we're talking about the impeachment of President Trump and how to make your own Christmas wreath, two seemingly unrelated topics. You will learn, number one, how to make your own wreath, number two, how to stop being so hysterical over politics, and number three, why these two are connected at all. So let's get started.
We are in Clearwater tonight. I'm Allison Morrow.
Hi, I'm Allison Morrow.
I'm Allison Morrow.
And I've gone to a lot of places.
On St. Pete Beach, Allison Morrow.
And now with my former Force Recon Marine husband, I'm going off-grid-ish. Unless you were hiding under a rock this last week, even if you, like me, wish you had been hiding under a rock, you probably noticed that news stations have been covering wall-to-wall the impeachment of President Trump. While all this was going on, I was making my first Christmas wreaths as gifts for family, and I started thinking, these two things actually have something in common, especially as it relates to the lifestyle change that my husband and I are making, moving into this Airstream after having quit my job in TV news. Take it away, Allison, for this first part. We're doing it mostly because we had a ton of Christmas debris left over from our tree. If you saw the last video, we cut down our first U.S. Forest Service wild tree, $5 for a 14-foot tree, which then we chopped down to 12 feet, but we couldn't get in the kitchen. Trimming the branches a little bit. So we had a bunch of branches left over. See, all these branches. And we figured, well, what could we do with them so that we don't just throw them away? And we decided we're gonna make some wreaths. I'm gonna have Lynn kind of explain the basics to making a wreath, since I am now going to start the second one. Thank you, Chaka. She always... Oh, that scared me. Chaka, really? There's only room for one extrovert in this family. Making your own wreath is actually really easy. If I can do it, you definitely can. The first step of the four that I'm going to talk about today is the form of your wreath. So like that circular wire, which you can order on Amazon or pretty much a bunch of other different sites.
For approximately half the price of what it would cost for me to buy a fully made wreath, I was able to buy 5 of these 18-inch, I believe these are 18-inch, wire forms that are used for wreath making. Along with these forms, the 5 of them that came in the mail, we also got some of this floral wire, which you can also use. I'm experimenting on this next wreath that we're making and using zip ties.
And yes, the form of your wreath is connected to impeachment, because however you see the form of the world around you is going to be your filter for how you consume the truth that you're seeking. And what I have noticed over the last couple of weeks, and really over the last several years, as somebody who was for a long time a journalist in mainstream television news, is that the kind of media that people consume is in large part dictating not only how they see politics, but often in today's world how they even see their neighbor and sometimes their family members. I have family members that can't even talk politics anymore because they get so emotional and hysterical about it all, and I'm convinced that in large part it is the messaging of the media that they consume. And this is one of the main reasons I wanted to combine the DIY wreath with this impeachment, because I have some insight that a lot of people don't have, having been a mainstream television news reporter for the entirety of my adult career so far. And the further away that you are from the information source, the harder it is to sift out exactly what's going on. Which brings us to the second step of making a wreath. It is making your bundles.
We have the boughs from our Christmas tree that we found, but we also had some other trees around the property that we were able to use. So there's some of these scrub pines. I like them because they remind me of the longleaf pines of where I grew up in North Carolina. So Allie and I grabbed a few of these, and then Allie really wanted to get some holly leaves, and we were actually having a hard time, even though they're supposedly everywhere around here, but she did find some of these holly leaves, and they have a really cool looking purple color, which we think is going to go well with the different shades of green that there are. And so Allie also found some of these pine cones, and we'll show how we affixed some of them. But you can see there where we took some of this wire and attach it to the bottom, and then when you can essentially push that through the wreath and attach it on the back.
When picking out your materials, do not be super snotty about it. A lot of the things around your own yard probably would work really well. Think texture and differences in color that are like variable, you know, maybe some browns, some different shades of green, stuff that just may not be like the bright glittery golds and silvers and all that kind of stuff that you find in a store. It's just more natural looking, and I kind of like that because we're getting these in the mail pretty late. They're going to show up basically right before Christmas, and that means that I think they're going to be able to keep their wreaths up a lot longer without feeling like that neighbor. Again, we made our bundles out of stuff in our own yard. We literally went and chopped it and picked it out ourselves. And this brings me to point number 2 when it comes to impeachment, which is the number one message I want to get across in today's video when it comes to media consumption and really consumption of pretty much anything else out there is that you have to see it for yourself if you really want to know what it is, how it got there, and whether in fact it's a product that you as a consumer want to continue supporting. For instance, one of the main reasons that I quit my job in TV news, moved out to the country, we're renovating the Airstream behind me, is because I want to have a closer look at my life and my choices. Case in point, a few months ago, after we had moved out here, I bought a quarter of a cow from our neighbors down the way who live about, I don't know, 10 miles away and have a grass-fed beef ranch. I went to the ranch, I saw the cows, I had an hour-long conversation with the ranch owners. I know what I'm buying. Now, the further I get away from those ranchers, the less likely it is that I really know the source of what I'm buying, where my money's going, what I'm putting in my body. And I made this change because there is no way that working 11 hours a day and living in a city and just churning and burning like that and outsourcing all of the things that I need to live to some other entity and just clicking online or buying at a store, there was no way I was ever going to get to the bottom of it all. I wanted to see it for myself. I'm not going to get into my own politics in this video because, quite frankly, if I were to describe myself as anything, it would be apolitical at this point, or self-political, I guess, because I'm really trying to narrow down my politics to my own local community and do politics in a way that is less of a I vote once every 4 years and more so I vote 20 times a day with all of these little actions that I'm participating in that build my entire life essentially that I've really been ignoring up until this point. And I say this because I have noticed a level of hysteria growing over the last several years that for me hints at the fact that people think that the information they're getting is solid, nonpartisan, non-filtered truth, and the world is ending because of it, and they just sit on their couches biting their fingernails, not realizing that there's a whole life out there of choices and voting opportunities that they're completely neglecting like I was once. And this brings me to step number 3 in making your wreath: securing your bundle.
Kind of reminds me of when I was a sniper in sniper school. So if you've ever seen any movies where you see the dude in his ghillie suit and it's like covered with dressing, i.e. Burlap. Well, there's nothing in nature that is burlap. So we, depending on our environment, we would have to clip a lot of different vegetation. You had to be really smart about the layering, so you would essentially blend in and break up your background. So in this case, we're not trying to be camouflaged, we're trying to clash.
If you hear what sounds like a rattlesnake hissing in the background, that's our Instapot because we're making chili. We use zip ties to secure the bundles individually.
And then essentially what you do is you will attach it to your hoop, to your wreath form, and then you're just gonna overlap them.
And I would say that we typically are putting about 14 to 16 bundles on one wreath. So a lot more material than you might originally set out thinking that you need to gather. And so to point 3 with impeachment and DIY wreath making, what are you secured to? What is your purpose when you get up every morning and walk out the door? Because as an environmental reporter for the last 6 years, I always used to say that actually the environment was secondary to the work I was trying to do to just wake people up from like the zombie mentality of just kind of going through the motions, thinking that their lives don't matter, not wondering how they could do great things in their own communities or being a critical thinker about the world around them, just kind of going through the motions. And so I ask you, when you wake up in the morning, what are you secured to? What is the framework by which you do everything else? Because at the end of the day, without that, the other stuff just starts to be like all kinds of, I don't know, a wreath that just doesn't really have a pattern to it. Because that's another thing about making a wreath. You want your bundles to be kind of uniform so that you see the whole circle when it's finally finished, and it's got some unity to it, a pattern that you can see that goes full circle. And finally, step number 4, add whatever flair it is that you want to add.
Sally even went so far as we're trying it out. She got some of Sassy's hay tufts, similar to how we're gonna attach the pine cones.
And also a horseshoe. Not bad. I gotta say, I can't take full credit. Obviously, you saw Lynn in a lot of the video. He's got quite the green thumb. And now your wreath is done, but this video is not quite over because I have one final point that I would like to make, and that is, as I have been watching the public's reaction to this impeachment and the political commentary on both sides of the aisle, I have noticed basically 2 camps. The one side is the world is ending, the sky is falling, this is horrible, we're hysterical, and the other side is I don't want to watch this anymore, I'm tired of it, it's all corrupt anyway, it's never going to change, and I just am sick and tired not paying attention. And both sides, actually, it's quite interesting, both sides point to corruption, but they totally disagree on what is corrupt. And what I would like to offer as a third path, besides hysteria or total apathy, is creating your own system. Instead of either pointing and screaming constantly at a system that you're saying is totally corrupt, but waiting to just try to make it better every so often when you can vote your own political leader into office, or just never paying attention to anything and being completely apathetic about life and all of it altogether because you feel like you can make no difference in that system, why don't you create your own? Because essentially that's basically what I'm sitting here in 20-degree weather talking to you about, not able to feel my toes standing in the snow in front of this Airstream, is that we actually have a lot more agency than we think we do day in and day out. We can DIY all the time in ways that most of us, like I have, and in a lot of ways still do, neglect. But I'm on a journey towards trying to regain agency. What I decided to say was, you know what? I'm not going to keep pointing at a corrupt system without making some changes myself. When I was covering the protests in Seattle over the inauguration of President Trump a couple years ago, there was one woman I interviewed who said she was glad that Trump won, even though she was not a Trump supporter, because she said if Hillary Clinton had won, she would have been the only one out there protesting, because what she was protesting wasn't a political leader, it was a corrupt system. And I may not be able to change that monolith. That train may be way out of the station there in Washington, D.C., but I can do a lot right here in the 10 miles around my house. And so I kind of took my ball off the field and came home, and I'm creating my own playing field, my own game. And that starts, for me at least, with knowing my neighbors, keeping my money in my community by supporting that rancher, for instance, I bought my beef from, and just starting to do more things myself. Because like I said at the beginning of this video, if you didn't see it, you didn't see it. You don't know if it actually happened, and you didn't do it yourself. You don't really know if it was done right. We hope you have a Merry Christmas. Bye!